They expect you to stay quiet, to swallow hidden fees, put up with faulty products, and accept poor service as just the way it is. But you can demand better. Stand up, speak up, because with Which on your side, you can say no to bad business, buy with confidence, and get the service you deserve. Which, the power in you. Find out more at which.co.uk.
Hello, it's James in the studio with some news before we kick off, because on Monday we're going to start to bring you something very special. It's a 4-part podcast series that we've produced to help guide you through everything about pensions and retirement. So think about the basics, how much to save, the future of the state pension, and how and when you need to actually take that money from your pension pot. Now, we've produced this to help you understand everything you need to know about pensions, and the lovely Jenny Ross, Which Money editor, has narrated it for you, so it'll be a very familiar voice for you. The first episode drops on Monday, and then the last 3 episodes will drop every Monday after that, so keep an eye on this podcast feed to have a listen to those. But today, we're going to be focusing on all things card fraud. Hello and welcome to the Which Money podcast. Joining me in the studio today, we've got our fraud and scams expert, Faye Lipson. Faye, hello.
Hiya.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Very good. Nice to have you back. But it's an interesting one, this episode, because we're going to be chatting about something that actually happened to you. Now, you are effectively the case study in your own story.
Yeah.
Take us back to... when was it? Last summer. Where were you and what happened?
That's right. I was on a big family holiday to Cyprus. There were 20 of us, big family
Oh,
group.
that is a big family holiday.
I
I thought it was just a small group, but a full-on family holiday.
We had 3 villas next to each other. It was
Very
our
nice.
turn to host that night. So we had everyone over. My husband had the barbecue fired up. Really lovely. And then I got a call that was claiming to be from my bank's fraud team. So not the vibe, really.
And this is the thing you kind of report on all the time, isn't it? You know, whether you're writing for the magazine, the website, or when you come and chat to us on the podcast, you often talk about whether, you know, when you get a call from somebody claiming to be your bank, you kind of have to, you know, set the alarm bells off and make sure it definitely is your bank. Did you think it was your bank straight away?
So I was really suspicious, especially as I'd been, you know, in an overseas country for a few days, and I thought perhaps my card's been cloned or something. I didn't really know. So I just did what I advised people to do, which is basically just politely said, I'm just going to hang up now, and then I'm going to phone back using a trusted number.
I'm surprised you did that, by the way, because I feel like when I'm on holiday, I'm just sort of in holiday mode and just totally switched off from everything. But you immediately clicked straight back into work mode, didn't you?
Yes. After reporting about fraud for 10 years, you could become a little paranoid, I would say.
So you hung up and then you looked at the back of your card and rang that number instead. And that's
Yes.
kind of one of your big bits of advice when you get what seems like a suspicious phone call, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So I got back through to the bank and back through to the fraud team, and it turned out, yes, it had actually been a genuine call from the fraud team to flag a load of suspicious transactions, none of which had actually gone through, thankfully, but they were being attempted.
And was this kind of happening in real time? Were these attempts being made?
I
or-
believe so. I think there had been attempts throughout the day, and they reeled off a load of different attempted transactions, and I knew none of them were accurate because all of them, I think, were taking place in the UK and I wasn't there. But the one that sticks in my head was Uber, for reasons that we'll go into in a minute. None of the other retailers I'd actually heard of.
Tell us about this then, because presumably, had you lost your card?
No, it was right there with me in my wallet. At the villa, I was looking at it as I was on the phone. They said, "Have you got your card with you?" I checked, I had it. The actual physical card wasn't stolen. It's just that somebody out there had some of the details. I think probably not all of the details, because they weren't able to successfully charge the card, but they probably had partial details, perhaps from a data breach or something. And that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to, I guess, do test purchases to see if they could get something through.
And is this what was running through your mind? Because I imagine if I was in that situation and, you know, I'd managed to find out that it was the bank and they were saying, you know, there's been some attempts on your card, but I was looking at my wallet and the card was there, I'd have been thinking, well, is this really a legit call if they're trying to claim that my card's been used fraudulently, but I'm looking at my card, then surely it all doesn't add up.
Yeah, so it's a really common form of card fraud. Actually, it's called card not present fraud, where somebody's just got your details and they're able to shop with your details without having your physical card. They're also able to do things like adding the card details to like a mobile wallet that they control, and it's at its highest ever levels at the moment. So it's really common. I'm not actually surprised that I was a victim, although it's never nice in the moment because so many people do experience this.
And was this kind of the first time this kind of thing had happened to you? I know you switched on to all this, but had you ever been a victim of anything like this before?
Yes, I was a victim of card fraud probably about 10 years ago now. It really is very common. And I think one of the things about this is that it can affect you even if you're incredibly careful. So sometimes people become a victim of this type of fraud because they've inputted their card details into a dodgy site. For example, they've been phished by a dodgy email pretending to be from Royal Mail or something. But often people have been really careful and they just simply don't know where their card details have been stolen from. But it could be some sort of data breach at a retailer where you've saved your details, for example. And really, most of the time, people will never know how their details were compromised.
And when you talk about being phished, that's a phishing email, isn't it? Where
That's
it
right.
kind of looks legit. You click a link and, kind of some of your details are then out there in the hands of somebody who you didn't want to. And you may find out straight away that it was a scam, or you may not find out.
Yes, sometimes if it happens to you, you might not even realise that you've been scammed until, weeks or months down the line when you start to experience, card payments and things like that. They're incredibly common. Most people will have seen kind of fake iCloud emails, Royal Mail, all kinds of couriers, and like surveys, like win prizes for surveys. All those kinds of things are classic phishing emails for people to look out for.
Speaking of those phishing emails, by the way, I don't want to brag, but I passed a test here at Which the other day when I got sent a test phishing email, and I spotted it and I pressed the button and I got like a congratulatory email back saying, well done, you spotted the fake one.
Feels good, doesn't
yeah.
it? We're all getting so savvy at those.
Back to your story then. So, you're on the phone at the bank. They explain that these transactions have been attempted on your card. And then what happens next?
So they said, don't worry, none of them have gone through. We're going to cancel your card. You haven't lost any money. That left me without a card in Cyprus, but it was okay. I was with a big family group, so that wasn't too bad. And then a few days after I got home, the new card landed on my doormat. So I had my replacement card. And as far as I was concerned, the fraud's over at that point and I don't need to be worried.
Well, there we go then. Podcast over, isn't it? But it's not though, is it?
Only.
Because something else did happen. Because as you say, you get a new card and you think that is the end of it. But we fast forward around a month or so into the future, and then it starts to happen again.
Yes, so I do always tell people who've been a victim of card fraud to continue to be a little bit vigilant of their bank statement, just in case. And I'm no different. I follow that advice that I give people. And after a couple of months, I started to spot something called an Uber One subscription coming out of my account, and it's a service run by Uber, I think, where you get discounts on food deliveries and cabs if you pay this monthly subscription. And I knew I hadn't signed up to that. I checked my own Uber account because I do have one. I hadn't signed up to that, and it's a shared bank account with my husband, so he checked his Uber account to see if he'd accidentally activated the subscription. He hadn't either, so neither of us had. So I knew this wasn't coming from me, and that's when I remembered. It just dinged a little alarm in my head that Uber had been mentioned with the fraud that had happened in Cyprus a couple of months earlier. So I phoned up the bank and I said, I think I've got some more fraudulent transactions, and I think it's some sort of continuation of what happened a few months ago. You've somehow not completely stopped this or cut this off.
So how had somebody managed to get your new card linked to Uber?
Yes, so I've been vaguely aware for years that sometimes when you get a new card, sites like Netflix, for example, might show the new card details on your account without you actually inputting them manually. So I was aware that there was something in the background that kind of auto updates these accounts, but I wasn't really thinking much about it, and I hadn't really thought about it much in the context of fraud. But what appears to have happened in my case is that the fraudster had saved my old card details onto an Uber account that they were controlling. And then when my new card was issued, that connection was somehow not spotted and broken by the bank. So then that fraudster's account, Uber account, was auto-updated with the replacement card details. So the subscription they'd been trying to set up was actually able to continue and actually charge me on the new card.
I guess this is like when you get a new card and you don't have to update the wallet on your phone. I know I got a few new cards last year, and Apple Pay, I don't think I actually had to update it. It just sort of knew that it was a new card and just continued to use it as normal.
Absolutely, yes. So the three cards, main card schemes, Visa, MasterCard and Amex, they all run these kind of automated billing updaters. They've all called them something slightly different, but it's the same principle. They run in the background, and if you have a mobile wallet or a recurring payment like a subscription, for example, then in many cases that will just simply auto update in the background, because we live in an age now of many kind of subscription services, and it's thought to be, and indeed it is quite convenient for many people not to have to think about manually updating those every time your card expires, for example, or if you lose your card. The trouble really comes, I think, when it happens in the context of fraud and these connections aren't kind of spotted and broken. So that's when you see these recurring instances of fraud over months, weeks and months, until somebody actually finally gets to the bottom of what's going on.
Because I don't think many of us would even know this exists. You just almost accept the convenience of it, don't you? You know, where either you have to replace a card because of fraud or because your card just naturally expires and you get a new one. A lot of the times you don't even think about having to update a subscription or Apple Pay, for example. It just does it and you just carry on with your normal life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's become too convenient, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a seamless experience. And I suppose in the context of a genuine subscription that you yourself have set up, that could be absolutely fine. Although there's an argument for there being a bit of friction, I suppose, so that you actually remember which ones you've signed up for and can consider whether they're still useful to you. But in many cases, this is just working as it's intended. It's allowing genuine subscriptions to continue.
So with the Uber One subscription, this actually went through, didn't it? It wasn't a failed payment. It managed to actually go through.
That's right.
Did you get the money back?
So I have now been refunded. It was a bit of a faff because Uber told me. So by the time I'd spotted it, there'd been 2 of these monthly payments, and Uber told me it could only reimburse the most recent one. So I had to go to my bank to get the previous one reimbursed, and these were really small amounts, so it was really annoying having to. I think it was less than £5 in each case, so it was aggravating having to go through 2 organisations to get a total of less than £10 back. And I think many people would have just not bothered perhaps and been satisfied that the connection had been severed. But for me, it was really important to see the whole process, especially as a journalist that specialises in this. I really wanted to understand how this is working and what happens when people report.
So it's interesting that you actually had to go to the lengths to get the money back. It wasn't an automatic process to get that money back, despite it just being a small amount. But it's just the principle of it, I guess, isn't it? You wanted to make sure what was rightfully yours you got back.
Yeah, and I really wanted to speak to the fraud team at the bank and really understand what their understanding was of why this had recurred and not sort of been cut off. And that's when this second fraud team person that I spoke to the second time round said, yes, this can happen because, you know, Uber and some other sites, they get the auto updated card details. And what we need to do now is, she used the phrase a full wipe, just to cut this connection off so that it can't auto renew when we give you your new replacement card, the third one. And so it was interesting to hear it from her own words.
So initially then, they didn't do this so-called full wipe of the first card. It was, a partial wipe? How did it differ?
It's hard to know what they did. I think perhaps they thought that because the payments hadn't gone through, they didn't need to interrogate further. Perhaps that's the only way I can rationalise it. From speaking to people that work in the banking industry and have read my story, what I understand is that sometimes it might not be spotted that something is a recurring payment. So you might be a member of the fraud team, you might see something tried to go through, it's been declined, and you might think that's okay and not realise that that's actually a recurring payment, and you actually have to do something to sever that link, or it could rear its head again in a few weeks' time.
How can you check whether or not your card is kind of linked up to this system, whether it is actually, a recurring payment, and then when you get a new card, those details are transferred across? Can you check with individual websites?
So the trouble is, if it's been done on an account that you don't control, if it's the fraudster's Uber account and not yours, you wouldn't be able to see that. So I think, based on my experience, it's really important for people that have experienced card fraud to actually say to the person on the fraud team, can you just check that none of these attempts or transactions that have gone through are recurring? And if they are, can you just make sure that you've broken that connection so that the fraudster can't be automatically updated with the new details? My understanding from speaking to people in the industry is that people that work on fraud teams, I'm sure many of them do a magnificent job and really help customers, but they can be under quite strict targets to close certain numbers of cases in certain time frames. And subconsciously that may sometimes lead to people cutting corners without realizing they are, and kind of manually checking lots of payments and seeing exactly what the nature of them is might be something that's a bit time consuming. So that's how I think these things could be missed, although that's something we're going to focus on a bit more as we investigate this over the course of the next few months.
So would you say then, to anybody who has been a victim of card fraud, would a good thing to do is ring up the bank and ask them to do a full wipe, just to be entirely sure? It might have inconvenient consequences because your Netflix subscription runs out because you sort of cut the subscription, but it might be worth doing.
So what you can do is, I think the first step would be to just kind of check your statement, or you can have kind of real-time push notifications whenever there's spending. If that doesn't annoy you, you can set that up. And then if you're not seeing anything suspicious, then you're probably okay. But what you can do, rather than requesting a full wipe, what you can actually do is opt out of the automatic updater scheme. In theory, you can do this. This is what the card schemes told us. Opt out fully, not even in connection with any fraud, but just because you don't want these updater services on any of your wallets or subscriptions. And then the next time your card changes, those subscriptions will need some sort of manual input from you in order to continue. Can be a good opportunity to review which ones you actually need and save a bit of cash. So yes, I'd say for people that have been a victim of card fraud recently, just keep an eye on your statement, see if there's anything suspicious. If there is, query it with the bank immediately and check that they've kind of broken that link. And you can also just consider opting out completely from these auto update systems.
It's interesting that we're opted in to begin with. I guess it's just one of those things that's deep in the T's and C's that a lot of us just scroll through and hit accept without reading. It's probably just buried in there, is it?
That's right. I think so. So this is what we are hoping to look at over the next few months, because I think awareness is really low. I myself was only kind of dimly aware of this, and I'm a money journalist, so I think most people have understandably very little awareness of this kind of thing. And yes, people are generally opted in by default. I think many banks kind of have this switched on by default with the cards that they're issuing. And one of the things I've started to hear from people who have read my story is that they've spoken to their bank to try and opt out fully from these auto update schemes, and they're finding that the bank staff don't really understand the request or don't really know how to action it. So that's something I'm a little bit concerned about, and I'm going to be looking at over the next few months to see whether banks really understand their obligations here in terms of people's rights to opt out of this kind of thing.
We'll have to keep an eye on that then. So are you writing this for the magazine, the website as well?
Yes, so that will be for Which Money Magazine and which.co.uk.
Lovely stuff. No doubt we'll have you back on the podcast to update us as well, because we'd love to hear about it. Before we wrap up, should we do some top line advice about this kind of thing? I guess from a very introductory level is just being aware of what scams might look like and learning how to spot them better. It's increasingly difficult though, isn't it, nowadays?
Absolutely. So the top way that fraudsters might get your card details is through kind of phishing messages, as we've discussed. There's also kind of fake online shopping boutiques and things that are sometimes they're advertised for on Facebook, for example, or social media. Sometimes they come up in your search engine results. You need to be careful that you're dealing with a genuine firm. You can look at the age of the website, for example, to see whether it's set up a long time ago or just a few days ago. So yeah, be careful who you're giving your card details to. Even with legitimate websites that you know are genuine and you use a lot, think about whether you actually need to save your card details on that site. There might be a really clear benefit, like keeping a subscription going, or being able to pay for a cab, late at night, for example. Those might be really good reasons. But if you don't really need to save your card and it's no real hassle just to input it from time to time, then I'd suggest you think about doing that. If you do kind of spot unauthorized transactions on your account, you need to report those immediately. Think about having real-time notifications for spending on your phone. Some people find it really annoying, but yeah, if you've got your mobile app, it can be a good way to spot fraud really quickly. And yes, think about whether you actually want to be opted into these schemes. You might not have many subscriptions and think that you just prefer not to take the risk, or if you've got lots of subscriptions, you might find it worth your while to continue. But just being vigilant of your bank statements and just being really thoughtful about where you share your card details. Plenty
to take away there. It is funny though, isn't it, that it did happen to you? Of all people, this could have happened to. Did you just think, of course it would happen to me when it actually initially happened on holiday?
Yeah, it's weird because part of me was the standard, I'm stressed and I don't want to deal with this, like anyone that's a victim of fraud. And the other half of me was like, oh, great, I get to investigate my own fraud.
A brand new story for me.
Such a nerd about anything to do with card fraud. So I found it really fascinating. And then, of course, when I looked online, I found there's so many reports from other people that have experienced a similar thing. So, yeah, fascinating. And I don't feel like we've quite learned everything there is to know yet, so that's what we're doing now.
Well, at least you got it resolved from a personal perspective, and I'm kind of glad you've got more work to do because it'll keep you busy over the coming weeks and months as well.
Definitely.
Which is great. Faye, thanks very much for coming on.
My pleasure.
That brings to an end another podcast from Which. There's loads more for you to read about everything we discussed today. Just head to the episode description for more useful everyday advice. There you'll also find an exclusive offer for podcast listeners like you to become a Which member for 50% off the usual price, giving you access to our product reviews, our app, one-to-one personalised buying advice and every issue of Which magazine across the year. Plus, your membership helps us to make life simpler, fairer and safer for everyone. If you'd like to know when we release a new episode, then make sure you press subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you can be one of the first to listen. And for any questions, comments or anything in between, follow us on social media at WhitchUK or email us podcasts@which.co.uk. Goodbye.
Looking to book a getaway in 2026? Why not try Which Travel Brand of the Year Trailfinders? Right now, Which members can save £100 on any 7-night or more holiday that includes flights. Just head to which.co.uk/trailfinders to find out more. Not a Which member? Get 50% off a membership right now. Go to which.co.uk/podcast offer to get involved. T's and C's apply.